either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are phoning home for this one.
We sure are.
For our annual alien-themed episode for the 4th of July, we are doing E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial.
Honestly, a classic. I know it's not your taste, and it's normally not my go-to for an alien film, but this one did rewrite how we think about and the plot structure of an alien film.
Yeah, and this was your pick this year, so...
It was my pick because I realized that you seem to have a vendetta against 80s family-friendly movies.
I don't think it's a vendetta, it's just I didn't grow up with them, so, like, they don't have the same resonance that everyone does, like... God, I know I've already pissed off some people, J-Rad, that I haven't watched Sandlot before.
Yeah. And the fact that you picked up the wrong one, not knowing that there was potentially other Sandlots to get wrong with.
I've watched 2 and 3 before I've watched 1.
That's amazing. I will say, this one's a fun one too. I picked this one not just because I picked it to get your goat, which is, I mean, a large reason I picked it, but I also picked it because this is a Spielberg classic, and we've talked about some of Spielberg's other works, but I think for a lot of people, this is like the Spielberg movie for them, partially because they grew up with it, but I think also because of the franchising that happened with this.
Yeah, I can see that, and I mean, to be fair, I did actually see a little bit of E.T. when I was younger, but it was the portable hospital part, and that was the only clip I saw, and I was like maybe 6, and so like when Elliot's freaking out and E.T.'s like,
yeah,
you're killing him.
Yeah, it's not a great spot to jump in at.
No,
as a 6-year-old. I will say that while I don't hate this movie, I am going to preface this with I have never liked E.T., and I think it's because he looks gross.
I can see that. So, for those unfamiliar, E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, which is the full name of the movie,
it is,
follows Elliot, a boy who becomes friends with a child from another world and names him what he is, like he's one of them Pokemons.
He sure does. And this is 1982. It's a Spielberg film, but this is into Spielberg's career. Like, people knew Spielberg.
This is after Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This is after Star Wars, Indiana Jones.
Like, he was already a household name. But for a lot of people, this was the childhood movie because this was the one that moved him from just like, oh, well, yeah, a kid could see Indiana Jones, a kid could see Close Encounters. But this one was a very family-focused movie, and it also was one of the first ones that Steven Spielberg talked very publicly while it was in production and when it came out about how it was part of his life and his background and why he chose to do certain characters and themes in the movie. And I think that openness connected with a lot of people in the 80s.
Yeah, and that's one thing I will say about Spielberg is he's very open about why and what he does on stuff.
Sure is.
Much better than George Lucas in some regards. And
I think so.
We'll get to why we're reviewing the version we're reviewing this time.
Yes.
But I also was interested that E.T. was actually based on a script called Night Skies by John Sayles.
Yes.
And it was rewritten by Melissa Matheson, who also wrote the screenplay for one of my childhood favorite films, Indian in the Cupboard.
Yeah, a classic, good one.
But what's interesting about Night Skies is that it was conceived as a horror sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and it actually came from Spielberg's research on Close Encounters, where a family was terrorized by gremlin-like extraterrestrials who rode their cows and kept trying to take their horse.
That's hilarious.
Which I can totally see, especially with the opening of this movie, which I'll get into.
Yeah.
But it was ultimately changed because Spielberg didn't believe that E.T. would be a terror or hostile. That he has this belief that aliens the aliens that are out there are friendly. They're not like the reptilian gray conspiracies that I tend to lean more into.
Same. I think we're in agreement there. I also think that part of the reason for leaning E.T., not just in general all ETs, but specifically this story into being a friendly one, is Spielberg, after doing the last several movies, had been away from his family for quite a long time. He'd done a lot of them back to back almost, and was really starting to reminisce on his home life and his family, and realizing that he had a lot of strong feelings about his childhood that he wasn't super happy with, including dealing with the divorce of his parents, feeling like he was alienated from siblings.
Oh, so Elliot's just Spielberg.
Yes.
Okay.
100%. And so Spielberg talked quite a lot during the production of this movie, and then afterwards when, like, the trailers and stuff like this was when people were really interested in hearing what the director had to say. And he talked very openly about how he felt that E.T. was there to really help families deal with these bigger issues, like divorce and difficult childhood parts. And to an extent, he's not wrong. A lot of people also picked up on that, and I do think that is part of the reason why people so strongly clung to E.T.
Yeah, it makes me think of, there was a book series that came out, I think around roughly the same time as E.T., or within this era, called The Hurts of Childhood, that was all about how to talk to your child about divorce, how to talk to your child about substance abuse, how to talk to your child about ritual satanic abuse, which is the first book I found in the series that got me down that rabbit hole.
It's definitely the strangest of the books in that series. But
well,
during this time period, early 80s, there was a larger focus on including children in family discussions and realizing that there is consequences for not just the family as a whole, but for the kids themselves, was being very much recognized. It was a theme that we see kind of repeat itself over and over again almost all the way up until the 90s, and then that theme changes a little bit to kind of reverse back into, like, a little bit more parent neglect.
Or keep the child sheltered for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, whereas the early 80s, a lot of movies not necessarily fix any of these problems, but they do bring them up in a much more open way than we had seen previously.
And it's also an era where, and it took me a second to remember that this is also the latchkey generation, where
sure is.
A lot of kids had more autonomy than they do, I guess, nowadays. I think I even looked up, like, this is when E.T. set, Richard Ramirez was, like, either in the middle of his spree, or, no, I don't think Richard Ramirez had even started yet, because he was, like, 85 to 87. So
this is before people were, like, even considering this, like, latchkeying problems to be a problem. Mm-hmm. But it was also before a lot of people had the thought to sit down and, like, have bigger, harder discussions, which is something we see now in modern parenting styles. It's much more common to have these sorts of conversations with kids. 80s, it wasn't. It was something just like you announce one day at dinner, like, by the way, your father and I are getting divorced. And then, like, bye, I'm going to work, let yourself back in, I'll be home at midnight. Like, and while E.T., I don't think E.T., and I don't think, honestly, most of these 80s movies do a good job of, like, properly addressing the issues that brought up in them. It is one of the first instances where we really see the structure of an alien movie pivot away from just pure fear into a social, like, discussion, not just around the family, but it also brings in a more interesting and complex version of authority. So with doctors and with the government in general, police, autonomy for children, and your friend group, like, having these more complex social questions be the center of an alien movie, which we do see a lot more now, I think, than we did previously. It's much more common to have to think about, like, oh, well, what if the alien is sentient? What if the aliens are here to communicate? Like, that is more of a theme than pre-E.T., because pre-E.T., everything was coming to get you.
Yeah, well, depends on the alien flick.
Exactly.
Because sexy space women is a completely different genre.
Still coming to get you, just in a different way.
Come and get me, baby.
Exactly.
But E.T. was directed by Steven Spielberg, as we've said. It stars Henry Thomas as Elliot, a very, very young Drew Barrymore as Gertie, and Robert McNaughton as Michael, and over 24 people as E.T., which I did want to list them all out, but
it's a lot of people,
guys. We'd be
guys.
talking for minutes.
Yes, it was a lot of people.
Yes. And our sources for today's episode include the Making of E.T. featurette, which I do also want to talk real quickly about the special features on this DVD, because I honestly was a little bit disappointed. This was, the 20th anniversary DVD?
It was.
And that's really, like, the only good featurette or special feature on the entire thing, because other than that, there is a 1982 ad for the Special Olympics that features E.T., some random adoption advertisement without E.T. in it.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, this is the era where on DVDs they added the theme park advertisement of come to Universal Studios.
Yes, which is interesting because the theme park ride had been open for quite a while when this DVD was released, so I'm not super sure why that was included, but the DVD special features, especially for a 20th anniversary of a major director, is a very very strange choice.
Well, and a huge cultural icon movie as well.
A huge cultural icon. That's not saying that there isn't stuff. There are several interviews with Spielberg that I found across the decades where they talk with him. There is several interviews with the music director that we will get to later on, where he talks about him working with Spielberg and his musical choices during this film. All of the actors and actress talk about this film regularly.
Yeah, and that's because E.T. wasn't just beloved by audiences, it was beloved by the crew working on it and cast. And
they sure did. And they talk openly about it. Feel free to Google and use YouTube. They have talked literally for decades about this movie.
Mm-hmm. Which, I guess, now seeing its success, it's hard to see that it was difficult getting E.T. off the ground, because I guess at the time, kids' movies usually didn't do very well, and Universal was very hesitant on making it. And to be fair, I feel that's the same case with a lot of kids' movies nowadays, too, anime movies, as a kind of a side note, too, is they're all kind of the same of, it's hit and miss whether it's going to do well. It's going to have its niche audience, but a theatrical release is something a little bit more difficult, at least in the West. We're seeing more and more of it. But.
Oh, sure. Well, and then you also have to remember that at the time that E.T. would have been in pre-production, Universal was spending an awful lot of time and money competing with the mouse. Disney was, and still is, one of their biggest competitors. And Disney has the market completely cornered for kids' movies, whereas Universal had the market completely cornered for a lot of classical horror and also adult action.
Yeah, the Universal monster movies, all that good jazz.
Oh, yeah.
Jaws.
Oh, yes. Those two things were the pinnacle of their movies, and so for them to branch out was always a bit of a risk. They'd had some success. Spielberg was their shining pupil, but it was always success with movies that were not so targeted towards kids and families that it exiled the standard solo adult moviegoer. Think Indiana Jones. Technically, kids could see it, minus, the whole couple scenes.
Created the PG-13 rating.
It did. And, even some of the other ones that had come out around this time, granted, I think the 80s was a little bit more slack on, what parents said you could go watch, I think, from just kind of looking at what my parents said they went to see.
Latchkey generation. This is before the whole parental advisory sticker on everything.
True, and also just knowing my grandparents and how much they asked if I could see something versus what my mom has said she's seen when she was a kid. I think it was just easier to go to the movies and if you thought it was bad, you left, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so Universal always really tried to keep that balance of okay, yeah, a kid could come with the family to see this, but a standard adult is the one who's going to be spending the money on this. Whereas E.T. was one of the movies that they were really putting a risk on, saying okay, this is very much a family forward movie. This is very targeted towards younger kids, not even teenagers.
Yeah, a young audience, because Elliot is 10 in the movie, I think.
Yeah.
So before we get into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, in replacement of Budweiser, which, let's be real, not the greatest, we have Bud Light, which is its close cousin.
Yeah, leftovers from another episode, I think.
Yeah, actually, I think so too. Cheers. That, and I have to save my Budweisering for this weekend when I go floating, because that's what my family drinks on the river.
Jeez. But E.T., and we're not going to call it E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial, we're just going to call it E.T. from here on out, probably.
Like everybody else.
Yes, we get a title card and credits over honestly some kind of creepy music.
Yeah.
Because it's very slow and starry, but we get the aliens. And it's creepy throughout. While I know it's trying to be mysterious, it almost feels like a little bit of a horror film.
It does.
Just the way they film it and the way things move around. Oh, and real quick, do need to put it out there. We are reviewing the theatrical version. We're not reviewing the 20th anniversary adaptation, where Spielberg did come in and zhuzh it up a little bit and add a couple little extra scenes to give more time with E.T. and Elliot on their sick day.
Yes, and there's another reason why. I watched both. I know you didn't necessarily feel the need because we agreed to watch this one version. I watched both because I was interested to see the differences back to back. They also edit the scenes to replace a lot of the guns with walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
It's a very strange choice. And also some of the shots are suddenly wider than they needed to be.
Yeah, and the part of the reason we went with the theatrical version is because we wanted to go with the original thing that people would have seen, not the edited, watered down, or slightly watered down version.
I was going to say, I've now seen both, and if I'm going to tell you to watch one, watch the normal one. Honestly, the special edition one is not that great.
Yeah, I didn't watch.
I did just because I needed to know, and it was kind of disappointing.
I probably saw it, because this is actually like the third or fourth time I've watched E.T. this year, because we watched it earlier with the tiny humans.
Yeah, it's a good one for them.
Yeah. But I also enjoy, like, how stiff all the old alien figures are, because they're just hobbling around, and the inside of the ship is pretty cool.
It really is.
Little odd plants. I don't get why their hearts glow when they're, like, communicating.
It's never truly explained, despite all of the extra stuff Spielberg had to later on explain this. He never does. Yeah,
it's like, this is one of those movies, it sticks in my heart a little bit because the movie Rubber.
Yeah.
The opening monologue.
Yeah.
Why is E.T. gray? No reason.
No reason.
Is he gray or is he brown?
Both, I think. He's just kind of an ugly flesh color.
Turd colored.
Yeah, he looks like he's made out of silicone, and it's kind of upsetting.
He looks like the beer shits you have.
Yeah, they do talk about he was designed like this. People sat down and said, this is what he's going to look like. And in theory, he's based off of several different animals' movements, sounds, and then several different famous actors of the time mushed together to get the facial structure.
Not necessarily actors, so...
And some famous people, and Churchill, I think, is in there.
No, so they tried breaking the mold in conventions and from the standard alien look, so the grays that we saw in Close Encounters.
Yes.
And they wanted something special, and they were inspired by Einstein, Hemingway, Carl Sandburn, and designer Carlo Rambaldi's Himalayan cat.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Let's be real. E.T.'s ugly from the get-go, but I do appreciate that he walks like a weird marionette.
I mean, he is a weird marionette.
He is. He's an ugly puppet. Bless him.
Yeah. I'm sure the person inside was beautiful.
There was generally about 3 people who played the inside of him, one of which was a young boy who was born without legs. Mm-hmm. And most of the walking scenes are him, and they have E.T.'s head, like, above him, and he's seen through the chest. Like, there's a slit in his chest.
Yeah.
And that's why he walks kind of awkward, is because, like, even the guy playing E.T. has no legs.
Yeah, no, exactly. But also, I kind of wonder the whole premise of E.T. being there to begin with, because, as far as we know, granted there's no explanation.
There really isn't.
Supposedly they're botanists, and why they've brought their child along, is this just like their everyday thing that they do?
Maybe they couldn't afford space daycare, I don't know.
I don't know, maybe it's bring your kid to work day? I don't know, it's a weird setup, because, like, it puts it in a position where E.T.'s parents are kind of bad parents, where
they kind of, Home Alone leave him places.
Well, it almost seems like it's a little bit of a more drama thriller on the alien side of things, because they fly off and it's like, okay, well, you've left your child here. How are they? Are they freaking out because they can't get into they left their kid on the alien planet?
I like to think that this is just the alien version of Home Alone. Kevin!
Except instead of leaving your kid at home, you leave him on a
foreign planet.
Yeah.
So it's Home Alone, 3 or something like that? I guess 2, because he goes to New York.
3's the one, and 3's the last one I saw. Is the one where he's sick at home with, like, the chicken pox.
Oh, that's right, he's got chicken pox in that one. Yeah, so it'd be 2. He's left in New York.
Actually, yeah, that is a pretty good comparison if New York was the redwood forest.
Yeah, I mean, poor Kevin the alien.
But I do like that the FBI show up, or Men in Black, most likely. They don't really... Well, they kind of point at NASA a little bit later on. But this is where, like, you see how... This is where I can kind of see why Spielberg wanted the updates. The practical effects were very limited.
They were.
And E.T., even though, like, it's very brief when you see him, when he's running through the forest,
It looks rough.
you can clearly tell it's just a puppet on tracks.
You definitely can. There's a few other scenes in here where it's even more noticeable that it's a puppet on tracks, because there's a few other scenes of him going through the woods where it's one of the other actors. There was two little people or dwarfs who also played E.T., and they are very different than the puppet version of E.T. Like, you can very clearly tell that, like, these are two different shots. And so I get why Spielberg wanted the update, but I kind of like how janky it looks.
Oh, I do too. That's why I get so annoyed with movies when directors come back, and absolutely, that's what I will say I appreciate with what Spielberg did, is he kept the theatrical version, and he kept the new one. And they're separate entities, whereas, like...
I do appreciate that.
Lucas is like, yeah, no, you're not going to get the originals anymore. We don't want that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that both are still available, but I think, especially with the rest of the E.T. franchise kept in mind, the jankety scenes are what make this movie so relatable.
Mm-hmm. No, they're artifacts of their time, and that's why I love practical effects so much, is, yeah, they might not be the best at times, but...
It's what sticks with you.
Yeah, exactly. But being left behind, I think the funny thing with this scene is that and I have to look for it more, I don't think they do it as much anymore, but whenever a city's quote-unquote dangerous, there's always just sirens wailing, like,
yes,
so loud and nearby.
And it's not even like other noises and then sirens, it's just sirens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even like mystery gunshot, maybe fireworks going off, it's just like, alright, police.
Which, I mean, to be fair, the sirens are kind of like this indicator that, hey, there's a crime happening, or...
Sure, but I think it's the way that a certain genre of movie portrays, like, a rough neighborhood, whereas other, especially comedies of the 80s, show off an actual rough neighborhood with, like, real-life shots of a neighborhood that would be considered, like, rough or near the train tracks, or, like, showing, kids just playing in an empty lot with nothing sort of vibe. Whereas this one went with the very, like, clean, safe, like, oh, there's sirens in the background.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's not a bad choice, it's just a different one.
An eclectic choice.
Yes, I mean, it helps really focus in the, like, problems that this movie has to deal with, because let's be real, this movie talks about a lot of subjects all at once, and the crime in this child's neighborhood really doesn't need to be one of them.
No. Well, and it's also the way this movie is edited, because we go from this directly to D&D night for children and getting some pizza, which it's an interesting scene, because Spielberg did this also with The Goonies.
He did.
Where there was, like, a little bit of mature elements mixed into the child. Like, granted, here's the thing. I didn't watch these movies as a kid, so, like, when I watched Goonies for the first time and there was a convict faking his own suicide to get out of prison, that was kind of like, okay. And then, like...
I think it was an 80s thing, because it wasn't even just, like, a Spielberg or, like, Universal or Warner Brothers sort of setting. There were Disney... I own them. I own them on VHS tape. There were Disney movies that did the same sort of nonsense, and they weren't necessarily even more toned down. There's just, like, extra adult aspects in these movies.
Well, and it's interesting because it takes the kind of, like, guys around a table playing poker, turns it to D&D, and one of the kids is smoking. Like...
Yeah, the 80s, man. The 80s.
His mom's home, too. Like, it's not even, like, hidden.
No, the 80s, man.
I wonder if the older brother was written as someone older than a high school kid.
No, he was definitely... As speaking with my parents about this time period, my father has confirmed that child would have been a high school kid.
Okay.
Just smoking.
Interesting. But we get introduced to Elliot, who's being the obnoxious little brother. We're getting a little bit of mystery of, like, oh, he sent out to grab the pizza, but on his way back, the garden shed is aglow, and...
Ooh, spooky.
Elliot's a curious little boy, which, I mean, granted, there's some cool shots of the cornfield.
There is, yeah.
I do wonder how that shed is glowing so much, because...
Don't ask too many questions.
There are going to be so many questions in this movie.
The plot, the actual... physics of E.T. don't make any sense.
No, not at all. I mean, cinematically, it's a cool shot.
It looks fantastic.
It mimics a little bit of when you see in extraterrestrial movies when they land and their door opens.
And you've got, like, the blinding light versus all the darkness. Yeah, no, it's definitely got the same alien vibes.
Yeah, but instead it's a garden shed, and Elliot freaks out to be like, hey, I found something. And his brothers grab fucking kitchen knives like goddamn little psychos.
You know what? Why not?
The mom goes out with them too. That's the thing too, is like the mom tells them, oh, put it back. But like, they still have them when they're in the yard and they're acting like they're going to stab the shit out of whatever it is. It could be a raccoon.
Yeah, you never know. Dangerous raccoons.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. This is their logic. They thought, I need safety, I need kitchen shears.
Also, supposedly E.T.'s still hiding in the shed. Where? It's like a 2x3 shed.
We will discuss E.T.'s hiding abilities shortly. Because it is a theme throughout this movie, and I know people who laugh and they're like, it's a cute little trope. I don't like it. I think he's the most obvious creature on this planet.
Yeah, no, he is. And also, like, because there's more fuckery that night where there's sounds from the garden shed, which the light's still on. They never turn off the light on that shed.
They sure don't, but you know what? Why bother? It's all the way out there in the yard.
No. But I will give the movie credit. There was good suspense in following the tracks and the first little reveal.
If you're thinking at kids level, especially for an 80s film, this is pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's still like a horror film. It's like...
Oh, it's still spooky, yeah.
Yeah, E.T.'s ugly face pops up in the cornfield.
Oh, he's very ugly. I don't care which one of you tries to inform me that E.T. is cute and you love him and that you have a plushie of him. I don't care. He's creepy. He's creepy. He's creepy neck.
Yeah, looks like a ball sack.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Also, this is like, I think it's also interesting because it shows Elliot's curiousness and how cautious E.T. is, because he knows. It shows a level of awareness that E.T. and his people are probably like, yeah, don't talk to those ones. They've got diseases.
They're weird. We don't associate with them.
Yeah, because E.T. runs away, and then immediately, Elliot's already giving him names like it's Pokemon. He's calling him E.T. because he's an extraterrestrial.
You know what, though? Good on him for coming up with slightly creative.
Yeah.
Not like a lot creative, but like a little bit.
Yeah, better than Goblin backwards.
Yeah.
And Trolls, too.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I don't even know. It's funny because they put E.T. as this very intelligent character, but, like, he never corrects them. He feels like... that foreign exchange student who gives you their American name.
Yeah, instead of telling you their actual name.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you just know them as Kevin for a whole semester.
Yeah.
And then you find out their name is not Kevin, and you can't find them on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, depends on where they're from. Maybe they're not allowed Facebook.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
No, I agree that, like, E.T. rolls along with it, but there's kind of a reason for it. E.T.'s character was very much meant to fill a lot of voids that Spielberg recognized in his own childhood. One of those being the need for a pet-like friend. Someone who doesn't necessarily talk back or argue with you, someone who's always there for you. So there's a lot of pet-like existences that E.T. exhibits, despite being an intelligent alien.
So not only do they become friends with him, basically they adopt, or they kidnap this thing as a pet. Okay,
so let me run through the things that Spielberg himself has confirmed that are roles E.T. fills throughout the movie. Pet is one of them. Father-like figure is another. Child-aged friend is one. And Jesus-like figure is the other. That Spielberg recognized as those were all elements that he felt at some point he missed in his childhood or missed while working on the film.
Pet makes a little bit of sense of something later on in the movie to me.
Honestly, all of them do make sense. And, like, when you're watching E.T., you don't necessarily think about, like, how hodgepodge E.T. is as a character. Mm-hmm. Because you're watching it from a child's perspective in a child's movie, and...
I'm not watching it from a child's perspective.
Even if you don't want to be, the narrative is all written from Elliot's point of view. This is scary because this would be scary to Elliot. It's not scary to the mom, because I bet you coons do live in that shed, and she's fed up with their bullshit.
Yeah, but she's not strong enough to tell the kids, put the goddamn kitchen knives away.
She's tired, damn it. She's gonna go inside and have herself a nightcap and go to bed.
Yeah. But I do like that you brought up the childhood logic, because Elliot does try to lure E.T. out of the woods with the candy.
Yes.
Which, one of the things I think is interesting in this shot, too, is using the tracks to kind of show roughly Elliot has something to go by to follow where E.T. went. And Also, again, this is where it's a horror film. There's like bits of like E.T.'s fingers pulling back, like he's hunting Elliot. E.T.'s hands are gross. Also, E.T.'s hands were also manned by like 3 other people who wore specialized long gloves, which is why E.T.'s hands look like they are not attached to E.T. sometimes. I do kind of want to re-edit this movie into like a trailer for like a horror film.
It would make a good horror film, especially the scenes where everyone is not knowing what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's got all the elements. It's just, there's also Elliot with his candy.
Oh yeah, no, it's...
trying to bribe the raccoon alien out of the forest.
Kind of a little reverse Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, but we cut from this to dinner and setting up the time frame of Halloween, laughing, and I do enjoy like the banter in this movie because here's one thing. They did a good job of writing siblings.
They did, and this is a trope that a lot of people caught on to. Like, the amount of sibling dynamics that happen in this film, a lot of people recognized in their own lives. That's how well written it is.
Yeah, like getting inappropriate with each other, calling one a penis breath, and your mom laughing, but can't really be laughing at you because technically you said...
You can't call your sibling that, but that is a good one. Save it for when you're older.
I don't know. It's to me it sounds like a very childish insult too.
It is, but also it's a solid insult. They won't see it coming.
No, not at all. But it's also kind of setting up their depressing lifestyle where like...
yeah, no, like these poor kids are... Like, again, this is why E.T. fills in several, like, friend, pet, and father-like roles.
No. You know who's the real victim in this movie?
Who?
The mother.
She's having a rough time, let's be real.
Yeah, she's having to take care of all 3 kids while, as Elliot brought it up, their dad's out in, like, Mexico with some new young lady.
Yeah.
And she's stuck at home raising these psychopathic kids.
One who has clearly just grabbing kitchen shears to go fight coons in the backyard.
Yeah. And honestly, I do get the older brother side of being pissed. Because
definitely.
Elliot is a selfish 10-year-old kid. That's
how it is. Yeah, that's how it is. Oh, yeah, no, the way they wrote this is fantastic.
No, I think it's a great scene, too. And then also, like, the mom having to deal with Elliot, like, kind of almost dying later on, too. Like,
yeah, she's having a rough week.
Oh, yeah. And, like, the shit you have to deal with after that of, like, what's Elliot doing now? Is he talking to that E.T. thing again?
Man, my son keeps finding aliens in the cornfield back behind our house. It's so annoying.
That sounds like one of those shitty, fake book titles.
Yeah.
Oh shit, my son found an alien again.
Yeah, or like one of those like really rip-offy animes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My son keeps finding aliens in the cornfield.
But also, the lack of supervision in this movie, too, because immediately after this, Elliot is outside staking out the backyard, like in a lawn chair. I know.
The 80s, man.
I have to keep reminding myself this is the Latchkey Kid era, but it's...
Not only is this the Latchkey Kid era, but they are also adding on to the fact that, like, it is, like, that's part of the movie is that these boys are being, even more than 80s standards, neglected because their mom has to work and they're going through this divorce and like all this stuff is happening in their lives, so she has even less time for them.
Yeah, it's like in Stand By Me where these kids go on a multi-day journey to look at a dead body by the train tracks.
Yeah, and nobody notices.
People notice. I mean, the other asshole teenagers show up that are gonna claim the body for themselves.
That's true. There's a lot of teenagers interested in this dead body in that movie.
Yeah, it's
a little strange.
It's very weird. But E.T. is back and he's creepy as shit. And also, like, he sounds so much like a pug.
Yeah, okay, so there's a reason he sounds like a pug. And that's because pug noises were used.
Oh, God.
A lot of animal noises were used, including horse, dogs, one of the soundmen's farting, and then I shouldn't say all, a lot of E.T.'s actual, like, voice was done by an elderly woman named Pat Welsh who smoked 2 packs a day. And that's why E.T. sounds the way that he does.
You're saying that, it makes me think more so that maybe it wasn't the smoker voice. He sounds a little bit like that,
the tracheotomy thing.
Yeah, you don't always die from tobacco song thing.
Yeah, the commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ben Burt was the sound effects creator for E.T., and he pulled a lot of sources to try and make E.T. sound very uncomfortable and very alien-like. Pat just happened to be the greatest of those inventions, right next to the fart that he uses as part of E.T.'s sounds.
I mean, I've seen how Mortal Kombat does their stuff too, so...
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, like, if you think E.T. sounds like, a horse chomping on grain, it's because it is a horse chomping on grain sort of noise.
Interesting. The one thing I will say about E.T., at least he tries to communicate instead of, like, cowboys and aliens or all those other horror films where they're savage aliens, but they can fly ships.
Yes, no, again, E.T. has a lot of roles to fill, and he needs to be friend and father and Jesus for several of them, so communication is good.
Yeah, also, I forgot he's kind of nude the whole... Well, yeah.
He's nude the whole time.
Not the whole time.
Oh, no, he does.
Remember,
he gets the hoodie.
Gertie dresses him up, too. He's a ghost at one point.
I forgot about the ghost.
So technically he wears clothes.
Yeah. We don't know a lot about E.T.'s other friends and family, minus the parts from the movie, where we see E.T.'s family, but also the Universal ride. Which I was going to bring up at the end, but you've pushed my hand. The aliens on the ride, which, by the way, Spielberg has decided that is the official sequel to this movie.
Which kind of pisses me off because he specifically said he didn't want a sequel to E.T.
He didn't want a sequel to E.T. However, there was a book written, and then that book got turned into the ride, and Spielberg loved it and did have his hand in creating parts of the ride. And it is, as he has said, this is the sequel. And so... you better hope Universal never takes the ride down.
Sometimes movies don't need sequels.
Well, let me tell you what, the sequel's not very long and doesn't have any actually interesting points. But the reason I bring it up here and not at the end is because you do get to see other creatures and quote-unquote people from E.T.'s homeworld. Because the whole point of the ride is it's the very end of the movie and you fly home with E.T. for him to say goodbye to you and you get to, see his family, essentially. And they, thank you for saving E.T.
Who the fuck thought that was a good idea?
Whoever wrote the book? I forgot who wrote the book.
Sounds awful. Imagine standing in line ooh, the E.T. ride, I love that movie. And then you sit there and it's just
It's kind of cool because it is a flyby and it's a lot of animatronics. Oh. So it's a dark ride with very little actual thrills to it. There's some up and down motions and that's kind of it.
I'd still probably get sick on it, but...
You would definitely get sick on it. But, if you were to ride any of them, that would be, your strongest go, I think. But, yeah, I can confirm that in the ride, I don't remember any of the aliens wearing clothes. So I think E.T.'s people are just nudists.
Actually, now that I think about it, usually in ufology, a lot of the aliens are nude. They don't usually wear clothes. Because they've gotten past
the whole moral dilemma of nudity.
Oh, no, nudity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as far as I know, according to the ride, everyone on E.T.'s planet is naked. As far as I can remember. Granted, there was a lot to look at on that ride.
All right. But also, we're 20 minutes into the movie, and it's finally revealing that it's not a horror film.
Thank God.
And we finally do get to see all of E.T. and not just, the little hand coming out, the little...
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's full E.T. reveal, and he's still gross looking.
Oh, God. Especially when, he gets erect.
Yeah, okay, so...
And by erect, his head...
goes up.
His neck increases in size.
That was part of... they intentionally did that because they thought it made him more alien-esque to have an extendable neck. It wasn't something that, anything in the world really kind of does, minus turtles.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes me think of, a giraffe a little bit. But
yeah, but giraffes' necks don't go up and down.
If a giraffe could do that.
Yeah, but they don't, so it's weird. And it's supposed to be weird. It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. I think the added extra fleshiness of him, the Sphinx catifiedness of E.T.
God.
Really does not assist in the neck movement.
No, not at all. The more we talk about it, the more phallic he sounds.
The more you watch this movie, the more phallic he looks. It's really upsetting.
But also, Elliot just lets this thing into their house,
Okay, that's just an 80s trope thing, though. It's children just let random-ass shit into the home.
I know, it's supposed to be the whole, we're not so different, you and I moment, and it's just kind of
there's a lot of trust building in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, he's lured him with sweets.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of the FBI searching. That's the one thing I will say, that the pacing of this movie, where they start bringing in the FBI, or not FBI, the Men in Black, whatever we're going to call them.
I think they're kind of meant to be FBI.
I don't know.
Men in Black wasn't a thing yet, so at least not in the way.
It was, but it wasn't the full blown as we know it now of the.
Who shaped the Men in
Yeah,
Yeah.
not that many. There were still stories if you were into the whole ufology and whatnot.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Secret government organization.
Mm-hmm. Get Elliot faking his sickness, as many kids did.
Yeah.
Just left alone.
Here's your TV.
Remember,
no TV.
no TV, which I've always thought was the weirdest thing. I get it's supposed to be something of, like, not to punish the kid, or, like, not to have the kid want to watch movies or watch TV as, like, a reward for being sick.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what else are you gonna do? Like, just lay in bed and be miserable, stare at the ceiling?
This is the 80s. There was a lot of things that weren't technology-based back then. Like, you could read...
Books? Yeah. But even then...
You could play with your action figures. You could talk to your alien friend. You could play with your yo-yo.
Yeah. Well, that's the one thing I find funny about this scene is because Elliot is showing E.T. all his stuff. He's like, look at this cool stuff.
It's such an 80s time capsule. I love it.
E.T. looks so goddamn bored. I know.
He looks very bored.
I know they were limited on, like, his facial expressions and whatnot.
They were. They had a separate model that was, like, meant for E.T.'s face close up, but they couldn't do it in the big shots.
No.
So he looks so disgustingly bored.
Oh, yeah. It's like, cool story, bro. We fucking fly through space. This is, you got a little plastic thing there.
Yeah, you guys haven't figured out how to make the plastic move yet? That sucks.
Yeah. Also, I have questions.
Okay. I might have answers.
So, I know a lot of this movie is a child's explanation of the world.
It is.
Does E.T. defecate or urinate?
In a lot of, like, children's literature, that is not talked about, because it's honestly something that, like, I don't think a lot of adults who are writing for children were comfortable writing. I really don't think it was a question about children, because, let's be honest, if you've worked with children, you know that at some point, the fascination about pooping and peeing becomes, like, a focal point. Yeah. They become very interested in where pooping and peeing comes from and goes.
Because it feels good to relieve the pressure.
But also it's just, like, something new to learn. Like, I think kids just, there are themes that all kids just, like, eventually, like, are interested in. Most kids at some point are interested in fish, and dinosaurs, and pooping. It's just a thing.
Some never grow out of.
And some never grow out of it.
Yeah.
But most adults, especially during the 80s, were not super comfortable writing that sort of stuff, so it's just not something to be thought of.
I like to think E.T.'s species is like Kim Jong-un, and they just work so hard that they use everything and they don't have to poop.
Yes. Just like ladies.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point, too.
No, this was 100% been in the time period where, like, ladies don't poop.
Men totally shit and piss all over the place.
And girls don't use the bathroom. They just go powder their nose.
Yeah, they powder it with something in the 20s.
In the 20s. 80s, well, too.
Today's, yeah.
I don't think it ever went away.
No.
Just fashion changed.
The brother is back, and I like how the brother is built up as... Originally, he's kind of like this antagonistic. Not really antagonistic, just kind of tired of Elliot's shit.
I mean, he's the older brother, right? Like, that's kind of how it is.
But he's also, like, a really good brother because Elliot's like, you have to make the most excellent of promises, bro.
Yeah, and also, like, if he had just been an asshole to Elliot, I think it would have swayed how well the siblings are written, because they are not written buddy-buddy, which is, I think, a lot of writers' trouble when they write siblings, is they write best friends instead of siblings, or they write two rivals who hate each other with a burning passion, which, don't get me wrong, some relationships are like that, but for a TV movie, it's much nicer to have, like, a slight rivalry as opposed to burning hatred.
Yeah, I've seen where some of those sibling hatred movies go.
I have two. And they are not in the same genre.
No. But also, I mean, there's like little nice touches here with the Space Invader shirt.
Yeah, no.
And then the absolute chaos when they see it all, which, here's the other thing too that I think Spielberg did a great job with, is the movie is shot in chronological order as much as they could to surprise the children. So Drew Barrymore's expression when she sees E.T. for the first time is her genuine expression.
It's very cute.
Also, how do they know E.T.'s a boy? Is it just because Elliot mind links with him a little bit, or...?
I think E.T. is a boy in the same way that when some people see a dog, they instantly believe that it is either a boy or a girl, regardless. Like, I've definitely had, like, friends who, like, regardless of the dog, they're like, a boy! What a good boy! And you're like, this is This is not a boy, but you know what? I like the spirit.
Yeah, I get it.
I think that's the entirety around E.T.
Well, it's like my Calico. Her name's Hobbs, but people assume Hobbs is a boy's name.
Because of the comics.
Yeah. Well, is Hobbs a boy?
Hobbs is a stuffed bear.
Tiger. How dare you compare him to Winnie the Pooh?
He's a stuffed creature in the imagination of a young boy who projects a lot of his own feelings onto his stuffed tiger.
Kind of like Elliot does to E.T.
Exactly, which is why I think we say he. Honestly, I think that's the entirety of it. It's just that's what Elliot felt comfortable with.
Sure.
It's an alien that doesn't poop. What does it matter?
It's weird. It's just a weird little aspect that they don't ever like address in these movies.
There's a lot of things they don't address.
Well, E.T. is naked, so maybe he saw.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. We see a lot of E.T. I don't know. I don't know what I'd be looking for. The kid glows.
It's under the flaps.
There's a lot of flaps. He's so wrinkly. Like a Sphinx cat.
E.T.'s body makes me think of some of those like Jack Nicholson photos when he's like on like the his yachts and on the beaches.
E.T.'s body reminds me of those dogs that have, like, genetic problems and they don't have fur anymore. That's what E.T. reminds me of.
Like old pugs?
Yeah, like hairless pugs.
Yeah.
Gross. Needs maybe some Vaseline on him. Some coconut oil rubbed into the skin.
Ugh.
A bath with a scrubber. Yeah, that's what E.T. feels like to me. No thanks. I'm good.
But they're all taking it quite well. I mean,
they really are. They're handling the alien invasion very well.
Here's what I think it is, too. These kids have seen a ton of horror films.
Oh, definitely.
Elliot,
they are left alone all the time.
Elliot and his brother reference like Michael Myers and
shit.
And
no.
It's like,
they've been home alone and they have a sibling old enough to go to the rent-a-center and like rent VHSs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They've definitely watched horror movies when mom's not home.
Yeah, I mean,
I know you have watched them with your mother, but she was asleep and she didn't know.
Oh no, I didn't watch. Well, there's only one time we've done that. Every other time it's been me alone me in the basement way up later than I should be.
Exactly.
We get a little bit that the Men in Black are getting closer.
Do.
And I really like that Elliot at this point is trying to like educate E.T. because he learns English in like a day.
Yeah.
Not good English, but English.
I mean, it's honestly very impressive.
Which I wonder if it's partially because of like the psychic connection that E.T.'s able to learn a little bit quicker because he's able to pick up on what like Elliot's basic understanding.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of it just has to do with being useful as a child's storytelling device. If it took too long, it'd be boring.
Yeah, and I do wonder if, well, one thing I do appreciate is that the psychic connection isn't explained like at all.
No,
it's just
not explained. Yeah. Not even a little bit explained.
Yeah, and it does a good job of showing, not telling, where we get little bits of Elliot acting under the influence of E.T., vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know, there are some other things about the scene, too, where, like, E.T. to me at times is like an old man trying to find his thoughts and say something, but he's also psychic, too, because he gets startled by, like, a beeping noise even while he's, like, circling the planets, trying to explain like where he's from.
Yeah, he loses track real easily.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we also learn he revives plants somehow.
He has slight Jesus powers.
Yeah. I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah, alien stuff. Don't worry about it. Aliens! And his parents are botanists. They're fine.
I don't believe it.
This is where a lot of people's, like, connection to, like, a godlike figure comes in with E.T. is, like, the psychic connection, the, like, ability to revive stuff.
That stuff pisses me off so much because it's so much of that stupid ancient alien logic. Well, if humans couldn't do it, of course it had to be aliens.
Sure, but I also think that, like, it's trying to fill a void in this child's, like, life that a normal pet friend or father figure couldn't fill on its own. And so by having him be, like, a little bit extra, a little bit miracle-y, it adds a layer of unnecessary, unrealistic hope.
This sounds like just such a weird anime character. This is my father who also is my pet/friend.
It does sound very strange when laid out, but I mean, those are the roles he plays, and so having him be more than just like a stranded gray ugly sphinx cat toad on the planet, having him have some powers gives to a little bit of an extra hope, which, I mean, pays out in the end.
Yeah, and the plant is actually used later on. It's not some little, like, throwaway bit that they did of, like, oh, look, he can do stuff.
You can do magic.
Yeah. And we get the next day at school, the nerdy insults, and I love old, like, childhood movies of, like, throwing insults back and forth because they're all so dumb.
They're so dumb, but they're honestly solid. Gotta remember them.
Yeah. Also, Elliot, or E.T.'s hiding is so piss poor.
It's
like,
terrible. It's honestly amazing that no one catches him as like, often as they really should.
No, not, I mean, he is, it makes me think of Abbott and Costello a little bit.
No, it has that slapsticky vaudevillian styling where, like, he's hiding in a plain sight.
Yeah, or he just happens to be on the backside as they both turn around each other at the same time.
A lot of just, like, perfectly timed moments.
Yes. Also, one thing that I noticed in this movie, everyone, for the most part, up until they come into the house and try and, like, study E.T., all the adults outside of their mother is shot from, like, the waist down, like all the other men
Elliot's
in black.
View height.
That height, but also, like, the men in black too, where it's that mystery of, like, who can you really trust? Because the teacher's there. Oh, maybe he's part of the whole conspiracy too.
True. Yeah, no, it's a good, like, way of showing Elliot's mistrust of the adults around him. He's been burned before.
Male figures are all that way too.
Yeah.
That's.
I mean, he's struggling with not having a father figure in his life, and he's not doing super well with friends in school.
No.
And clearly the teachers are not helping him in any way.
No, not at all, because, one, they're exploring biology while E.T. causes chaos, which is a nice nod to what they would do if they found E.T.
Yeah.
Dissect him.
There's a lot of good parallels in this movie.
And this is where we really start to see the psychic connection of Elliot kind of freaking out, which 10-year-olds watching frogs die.
Yeah.
And also Elliot drunk.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. But there is inklings of, like, also E.T. missing home. Yeah. And Elliot saving the frogs, which Elliot's goal, it's a good way to set up Elliot's goals are opposite the adult's goals.
True, yes. And also, like, the desire for compassion and, like, as opposed to just pure understanding. Because I'm sure the adults in his life have tried to just get him to understand as opposed to have a compassion with him. Like, yes, Elliot could probably comprehend all of the struggles he's having. He's just not emotionally dealing with them right now because he's 10.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why they wrote books like this back in the day.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's a fun scene too. I mean, it's a child causing chaos.
Oh, definitely.
We get the mom comes home. We get the little walking around, learning that E.T. can basically fully speak English if he wants to,
which is very impressive that he learned this so quickly.
And also learned it while drunk.
Yeah, well, whatever motivates you. Why not?
Beer's a good motivator.
It's a great motivator.
Yeah. But it's like, it's a funny moment when Elliot does come home. And Gertie has him dressed up in drag.
It's very cute.
Or, maybe
no,
not
it's
even
just,
drag.
It's just dressed up.
Yeah.
Because she's little. She's, like, it's not a play on anything.
No.
She just used him like a doll or a cat or a dog.
Yeah, and he's like, take that off, it's lame. But what I like about this is just like, oh, E.T., what did you do today? It's like, oh, got drunk, learned English, started taking apart your primitive electronics to phone home, the usual.
Yeah, it's fine. And then me and the kid here, we're just having a tea party. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And I wrote a slide, like, little joke that E.T.'s not even been on Earth a day and he already wants to leave, but I have
but at the same time, like, I feel him.
E.T.'s a child. Like,
he would probably like to go home.
No, exactly. He's like, okay, I found some cool people, but I want my mommy and my daddy.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, mommy and daddy left me on this weird planet. Feeling a little hurt.
Yeah, E.T.'s parents are
It's not like they left him at the grocery store. They left him on a weird planet.
Did they, or are the parents actually grocery shopping? Maybe that's what they're here for, is to find edible plants.
Maybe it's like when your parents pretend to leave you at the grocery store and they just went around the aisle while you weren't paying attention to teach you to stay close.
Yeah, I remember
maybe E.T.'s parents are just, like, right around the other side of the moon.
That's a shitty way to do it, because obviously E.T.'s not going to be doing well.
No, he's having a terrible time.
Imagine if you did that and your kid dies.
That would be terrible.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It would be terrible.
And it's possible because now the Men in Black are listening in.
That's true, they're here.
Which, I mean, there's some stuff in this scene, too, that I don't really get, where they're having, like, a memory of the dad. And
I think it's just to add to, like, explain the emotions that the kids are having at the moment.
But it's not really fleshed out. I think they could have left a lot of the dad stuff at that very one scene.
Sure. I don't know. I don't mind it so much just because it does break the, like, standard trope of, like, just telling me that there was, or even just showing, like, one scene of the dad being like, I'm getting out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, you never hear from the dad again. I kind of like that there's, like, this reminiscence, because then it adds to, like, this idea that, for the kids anyway, he was their dad, and they miss him. Even if, like, you know, that's not the full story.
Yeah.
You know? Like, because it's from their point of view.
Yeah, dad just gone and left us.
Yeah, as opposed to, like, knowing the full story of, like, dad gone and left us for a 20-year-old in Mexico.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
the abandonment and all that.
Exactly. It's a hard emotion to try and figure out, and where do you put the blame for that? Where do you put the anger for that?
It's the dad's fault.
Yeah. Oh,
I guarantee you it's the dad's fault.
No, I mean, this is an 80s movie. Yeah, of course. But, like, also just from a kid's point of view, like, having these memories be good of your dad and not being able to comprehend why he would want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
It adds to a lot of, like, the extra emotions that I do kind of appreciate, because it does bring that back up later on when we're having to deal with, like, should I get adult for this problem? Should I not get an adult for this problem?
It's in this movie, it's never get an adult for any of your problems.
But this kind of adds to why, because he thought he had someone he trusted, that he like saw as like the ultimate adult. This is the most adulty adult, other than mom. And he cannot be trusted.
This is why E.T.'s the father figure, because he goes to E.T. for his problems.
Exactly.
Well, kind of his bigger brother, too.
Yeah, I think all three of the kids are trying to figure out something. It's just Elliot's the main character.
True. Which, there are some nice little parallels between the mom reading the story of Peter Pan to Gertie and E.T.'s story just a little bit. I mean, it's...
Yeah, no, it's cute.
Yeah. But now it's time to build the radar, and it's Halloween, which this is where we have the plant brought back in where the plant's dying, is a good nod to where E.T.'s health state's turning.
True.
Which, I don't...
Might be the diet of candy that's doing him in, but you know.
That is actually one of the questions I have later on.
It might be the diet of candy that's killing E.T., but, you know, who am I to say?
Yeah. The one brother, like, wanting to go as a terrorist and the mom freaking out is, like, their distraction is such a kid
Yeah, it's perfect.
Thing. And I kind of wonder a little bit. So, E.T. tries healing the fake cut on the brother, the fake wound. I wonder if that's what really pulled the connection to him and Elliot. Is when he healed him, and that's where, like, they were kind of cyclically bonded.
Yeah, maybe.
Kind of like is E.T. a necromancer?
It's never stated he is.
He brings plants back to life.
I mean, so do I if I buy them from Walmart.
I mean, true, but, like...
I'm not a plant necromancer, I just happen to water it.
But E.T. doesn't water it.
Well, that we know.
E.T.
He does alien magic. He might be watering it with air.
E.T. does not pull the aliens from Scary Movie, piss out their finger, produce water.
He doesn't explain what he's doing. That's why it's magic.
E.T.'s a necromancer.
He might be.
He brings himself back to life, too. Ooh.
Kinda, yeah.
I wonder.
I can confirm that the ride does not discuss the necromancy of E.T. and his people.
It should.
It doesn't.
I want more of it. God.
It doesn't. None of the E.T. content that I could find talked about that at all. Including all of the commercials I watched with E.T. in it.
Also, like, this scene too where the mom she doesn't question that her daughter is shorter now because E.T. when erect is about Gertie's height.
Yeah.
But this scene, he is clearly shorter than Gertie, and the mom does not notice whatsoever.
She's not paying any attention.
Or the fact that a little bit squatter, too.
Wider, for sure.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. But, I mean, at the same time, it's a decent enough disguise.
It's cute, too. Like, it works from, like, a kid's storytelling point, and it's just passable enough to be like, well, maybe the mom's not, like, really paying attention.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really matter.
She's got her own stuff, and... Also, there's a nice little nod to the Yoda costume where E.T. like kind of is drawn towards it, which I wonder if E.T. goes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Is E.T. in the Star Wars universe?
Kind of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. They're in episode 1 or 2 when they're at the Senate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So E.T.'s people are kind of in the Star Wars universe. It is not a thing of like, oh my god, they are confirmed definitely people of the Star. They're there because they're a fun Easter egg. Calm down, people.
No, I want Jedi whatever E.T.'s people are.
There are not Jedi E.T. people.
There should be. Or Sith. Ooh, actually, that would make...
He's in like 2 things of the whole Star Wars world.
No. That actually makes much more sense. Why he can revive shit is because he's gotten into the dark side of the Force to the point where he can revive even the dead. E.T. is a Sith necromancer.
E.T. is only in Star Wars because it was a fun Easter egg once, and then he's in it, I think, again later in the background in like one of the market-esque scenes or like one of the tavern scenes, I can't remember. And he's literally there as an Easter egg. I
reject it. That I am fully convinced now. E.T. is a Sith necromancer.
Okay, well, Spielberg says otherwise.
Well, Spielberg ain't no shit.
Spielberg knows lots of shit! He might know most of the shit, to be honest with you.
Spielberg, let us know if he's a Sith.
He's not a Sith. People have definitely asked this before.
He's too nice to be a Sith, I agree.
Yeah.
But he does, I mean...
We also don't know if that is E.T. in the Star Wars universe. They used the E.T. puppet in the Star Wars universe. It's not necessarily E.T. himself. It could be a different one of E.T.'s people. And granted, a lot of the E.T. people did not look a whole lot like E.T., not gonna lie.
Is E.T. the Anakin Skywalker of their world, of their people?
I hope not. That was a mess. There should be very few Anakins of the world.
E.T. comes back and just slaughters a bunch of other younglings.
He really shouldn't. He really shouldn't. Their plan was very cute and full of animatronic things. I liked it a lot.
I would love an E.T. game where you just go around massacring stuff as E.T.
We will get to the E.T. game, don't worry. Yes, don't you worry, it's on my list.
We will. But they're into the woods, which we get the fun little flying and kind of smart plan of, hey, we're going to go exactly to where you were originally.
Honestly, not a bad plan.
But also, you don't think that Men in Black are watching this place?
Well, he's a kid. He didn't think that far ahead. He did good to get him out of the house in one piece.
Yeah,
He's
true.
feeding him a diet solely of Reese's Pieces.
Junk food, and then E.T. found the beer.
True. Which, by the way, I'm aware that it's Reese's Pieces. I don't care.
Yeah. We get the very classic shot of flying over the moon like a wizard.
Yeah, it's cute.
Yeah.
It's classic. It's, the background for so many things. Mm-hmm. The poster 3 times over.
Well, I also wonder if, E.T.'s setup would work. Oh, also the DVD case.
Yeah.
I do wonder if E.T.'s setup would work at all.
I don't know.
Actually being able to radar in like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends how far away his parents are.
I don't know.
I know very little about radar. It took, it was in, 1 class, and that was it.
And we do get to see some of the MIBs are starting to swoop in.
Yep.
And
they're closing in.
The device seemed to have worked. I do appreciate that he reprogrammed the speaking spell to have, his language on it.
It's very cute.
But also, it makes me wonder, how did no one else see the ship the night before?
Look, aliens, man. Don't worry about it.
I mean, enough people. It's not just the FBI or Men in Black that showed up. It's clearly, the sheriffs and stuff, too. So there are people who saw it.
Oh, yeah, no.
And this is
clearly someone called it in.
And this is, right behind Elliot's house.
But also, it's the 80s. And there was, a spike. There's spikes throughout history. And I think the 80s also had a spike. If not, the later 70s had a spike of people, claiming to have seen UFOs. Mm-hmm. It was a popular hobby to go look for them for some.
Still is.
Yeah, still is. And, there was a very broad definition of what qualified as a UFO by then, as opposed to, just having, looking for flying saucers. It had expanded to orbs and flashing lights.
Yeah.
And, triangle-shaped lights, much more like what we have today, sort of, shown on TV anyways. So, yeah, I'm not surprised people called in at least a few times to be like, hey, Sheriff, go look. What is the lights in the forest? What's going on?
Is this you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I guess. I don't know. Just another little detail of An homage to the No Reason, I guess.
Yeah, but also, you have to build up somehow. And if, like, extra cops and Men in Black and sheriffs and stuff showed up at the end, and, like, they didn't explain at all, or, like, show them at all beforehand, it would be a little weird to be like, and now there's barricades everywhere! Wah! When we've seen, essentially, like, 2 Men in Black.
Yeah, they're trying to keep... I get it. They're trying to keep it under wraps.
Yeah.
Hush, hush. No, there wasn't anything. It might be, you don't see me.
Exactly.
Okay. And now we also get to a bit where Elliot is actually sick now. He kind of was coughing a little bit, and it's showing that, hey, we already know that Elliot's linked to E.T., so E.T.'s not doing well. Neither is Elliot.
They both need cold medicine.
And Elliot's also out all night because this is his growth as a character, that he's caring about others finally, not just his own interests and goals.
Yeah.
And now we cut back to the house where the mom is worried. Spooky policeman shot like the feds as well is there. Actually sick, and I do wonder if it is because E.T. healed him. Is the only reason, because...
Yeah, maybe.
Why didn't E.T. mentally connect with Gertie or the brother? Is it just time you have to be around him? Or does E.T. pick of like, yes, this is the one. I will use the move Destiny Bond. If I die, you die too.
No idea. They do not say. It's just Elliot's the chosen one.
Sure.
Congrats, Elliot.
I mean, what a horrible thing to put, like, your quote-unquote best friend at this point through of...
Oh, yeah, but also it's very much meant to, like, be a bonding thing that, like, they're in it together. This is the new hard thing together.
Yeah. My mind went to Jack and Rose and Titanic.
Oh, yeah, bye, Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I love how recently, I think it came back, like, not that long ago, that, like, he talked about, like, no, I did the research, they don't both fit, they would have sunk.
No.
Wrong.
No,
they would have fit.
They would have physically fit, but the buoyancy, like, they actually tested it
I know they did.
Yeah.
Die together, damn it, it's more romantic.
But then we wouldn't have a movie.
We still would have had a movie, it just would have ended then. I was saved an hour and a half.
No, we wouldn't have had a movie because they wouldn't have been able to track her down to tell the story of Jack. Because they both would have died there, and she wouldn't have had a grandchild, she wouldn't have seen the TV.
We could have waited until that one guy went to the Titanic in his little boat to make a movie about the Titanic, and then we could have had a movie about the Titanic.
But we wouldn't have had Jack, and then we wouldn't have known.
Well, see, it's based off of real people who were there, and we do have their accounts, so, like...
But the only person who cared that Jack was alive would have been dead.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm not really interested in Jack, to be honest with you.
I get it. I do also appreciate that at this moment, too, the big brother is actually taking action. Yeah, he notices, hey, something's wrong. E.T.'s missing. I'm gonna go find him. And also the way he ditches the cops is pretty cool, of, like, taking the back alleys.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, and also, I think that just shows how well they knew how to write children is. They don't dumb them down. They're intelligent in their own right. And
they're not dumbing down the adults either, which I appreciate. Like,
no.
The adults are maybe a little careless, but they're not written in such a stupid way that the children are allowed to get away with the impossible.
No, exactly. That's why it feels like a believable 80s movie of,
yes,
yeah, of course the kids are going to go Halloween on their own. It's because...
It's the 80s, that's what you did.
Well, you also have the big brother watching over the two younger ones. The mom
like,
has to be home.
in theory, they're in their own neighborhood. They know their neighbors. They're probably going to, like, see friends that they know. Like, they theoretically would be perfectly safe.
Yeah.
Minus the aliens and the cops.
True. I also enjoy where his brother finds finds E.T. just in a water drainage ditch with a raccoon.
Yeah.
Like, E.T. looks like dog shit, like white
terrible.
dog shit in this.
Yeah,
but
that's not great.
E.T., like, imagine E.T. was probably seconds away from being a little bit of a meal for that raccoon.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I know that's not explicitly said, but it's close.
I mean, at the very least, he's for death in a ditch. Like, that part's very clear.
Oh, yeah. And he's, like, face down in it, too.
Oh, yeah, no, like, it's kind of upsetting, but also, like, he looks so stupid that it's hard to be upset.
Yeah.
Which honestly works out, because this is a children's movie, and you don't want to be that upset.
No, not at all. Well, it's hard not to be upset, because this movie does get horrible after this, because it's time to reveal to the mom that, hey, your son's dying, and so is this alien that we kind of
Been
brought
hiding
into
from
our
you?
house. Yeah, exactly.
He's been here all day with you.
Yeah, which I do wonder if it is what they fed E.T., or is he just dying because...
It's implied that he's dying because of the planet.
Or maybe he just has to take a... Wait, what?
It's implied that E.T.'s not supposed to be here, and that's why he's dying.
So it's like the oxygen in War of the Worlds.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Like, he's not supposed to be here. It'd be like us going to the moon with no suit. It'd be bad.
I like to think he's just constipated.
He might be. There's a lot of Reese's Pieces.
Yeah, exactly. See, I'm bringing up important questions of why this doesn't make sense, because how he's eaten like piles and piles of food, drank a ton of beer. We have yet to see him take a piss or shit.
This is true.
Do they have? Can he eat?
Maybe, I would say he might not be supposed to be eating at all. He might be photosynthetic.
Well, E.T., do they have to prop him up on the toilet, or do they let him outside like the pet dog to take a shit in the yard?
When your father figure is also your pet figure, you know, you let them choose, I think.
The nickname I gave your husband of Dog Messiah has a whole different meaning now.
Yeah, thankfully no ETs in our house.
God. I don't...
Yeah, it's not explained, it's not... Or anything, it's just implied that that's, like, it's because he's on Earth. And he's not supposed to be here. But I like your theory of that he's only eaten candy and beer. And that would make anybody sick.
Yeah, I still like to stick to my idea that they have this powerful Sith necromancer that they have to let outside to do his business.
I mean, maybe. I don't know, maybe.
But as they're actually going to try and go get help, the feds in NASA spacesuits show up, which I do really like this scene because it's kind of like a surreal door opening where it feels like it'd be something from like David Lynch or Doctor Who, where you open your door and this spaceman comes in.
Oh,
like,
yes.
It's not even a hazmat suit. It is a full spaceman outfit.
Yes, it is the most extreme.
No. And I love this like bit where he does it like 2 or 3 times in this movie where we finally see like the full body of the cops, but it's always them like walking down the street over a hill. Like, it's very imposing. Yes, no, exactly. Which is like, come on guys, we gotta line up and walk down the street all menacing now. It's so menacing. It's fantastic. But yeah, this is the part where like I saw E.T. as a kid and why I didn't watch it after that, because I didn't even think to rewatch it. But where it's all the tubes and everything, that's kind of scary if this was the only part of the movie you've seen. No, it's scary even if you've seen the rest of the movie. It's upsetting. Yeah. Especially compared to all of the, like, very familiar scenes before this. Well, it's also a weird scene, too, because we get introduced to the one kindred spirit who's a scientist slash kind of the replacement dad figure, but doesn't really do a whole lot other than, I believe you. I've been waiting for them. I saw them when I was a kid. Yeah, but I like how the way that it's done is because there hasn't been any other adult other than Mom to believe Elliot up until this point, it almost feels disingenuous. The way that he's like, no, I believe you. And like, from a kid's point of view, especially if you're struggling with believing adults in your life, it would be so hard to be like, oh, great, an ally. It'd be more like, do you? Or are you trying to just get me to talk, copper? Yeah. Sort of. Like, it'd be such a battle. No, exactly. And I have more questions about the scene, too. Okay, well, I don't know if I have answers on this one. So, one, E.T.'s dying, I think is kind of sad, but... Yes. Why does Elliot think that he can fix him? Because, okay, so, I think this is just a kid mentality of when things are going poorly, especially with life, you want to fix it, right? Like, I'm sure Elliot would love to be able to fix his dad so he could come back, fix his parents' marriage. Not something possible. No. I'm sure, like, if he had a pet that died, he'd want to fix his pet. Not possible. E.T.'s filling that same sort of role, that sort of, like, hurt and loss here. Elliot would love to fix this, but he's a kid. It's like having to put down the family dog. Yes, there's a lot. No, this is a thing, and, like, people still, like, even adults struggle with this all the time. Like, you want to fix the thing you love, you don't want to let it go. Yeah, I get that, but I don't know, this whole, now that you've put E.T. in this weird position of father pet god, yeah. It's really awkward when you recognize what roles he plays. Yeah, I don't know. It is a terrifying bit too, and like, I just know, I don't know. I'm a little conflicted on the scene a little bit more now too, because, I mean, on top of Elliot, like, trying to one save his dog father. Which actually sounds like
a spinoff.
Well, Dogfather also sounds like there would be a movie about like a dog gangster godfather. I am the Dogfather.
That feels like that might exist.
I'm sure it's out there. But also these doctors, which fun fact, were actual doctors because Spielberg didn't think that actors could get the same energy that real doctors could.
He wanted to make sure the dialogue was right. He wanted to make sure the energy was right. Honestly, I think they did a great job.
Yeah, except they don't know what this being is, and they're just like, yeah, let's start injecting him with a bunch of shit, and...
You know what? They're doctors. They're making the call here.
Let's electromagnetize his heart.
Yeah. Look, they're doctors, so they at least know words. And they have some basic comprehension of, like, what possibly could be. I like that he went with this direction. I feel like an actor would be more inclined to make up random shit.
Yeah.
Whereas a doctor at least is basing things off of stuff they kind of already know.
This is what I'd check in a person that's going under cardiac arrest.
Try it on the alien. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I mean, they don't got any other option, I guess.
They really don't.
Yeah. But even then, it's all for naught because they're just like, well, he's dead.
Yeah.
Caught time of death. Thingamajig died. All right, we're out of here.
I mean, can you blame him?
Yeah. Well, and it's not even like you don't have you have like maybe a minute to mourn before Elliot's crying over E.T.'s tomb, and E.T.'s like, I was joking.
Surprise, I'm not dead. Yeah.
But how was he alive? Is it oh, I know exactly what this is. This is where he's the Messiah character where died and then came back.
This is the connection that a lot of people made specifically to Jesus. Spielberg doesn't necessarily specifically say that he ever thinks of E.T.'s character as Jesus-esque. He just sees him as, like, an overly, like, miracle-bringing being.
God, I kind of want a cult of E.T. Like, just to, like, that's all the people worship is E.T.
That would be a terrible cult.
Yeah.
That'd be terrible.
I can see it.
I could too, but, like, I don't like it.
Yeah. Well, my thought was, like, was E.T. again? Your thought, this whole thing you brought up changed everything because I'm just like, was E.T. revived by the power of friendship or his family? The other thought was his family might be coming nearer, so that's why he's alive. Is the psychic?
It is implied that like his family, because that's what he says right after he gets like that he like quote unquote comes back, is he's like telling Elliot that his family's coming back because his heart starts glowing and stuff. So like he needs his family to survive. That's
I get the symbology of like, hey, you need to have your family.
Yeah.
But can you imagine like having to live like that where you can't live too far from your colony, otherwise you die? That would be
miserable. Because like you couldn't go on vacation.
Yeah, no, exactly. Or you take an entire family vacation.
But at some point your family's too big to vacation.
Apparently not with E.T. Not with E.T. You take your kid. That's why he's on the ship to begin with.
They can't leave him anywhere. He'd die. God damn it, E.T.
That's interesting though, is like if there's a this is horrible. If you don't want a specific kid in their world,
you just leave him somewhere.
You just leave him on a planet to die alone. Or like the one annoying member of your tribe of like, all right, you've served your purpose. We're just gonna leave you to die like the Ballad of Narayama.
Yeah, little Jimmy over here wouldn't stop asking questions, so we left him on Planet X.
We had no choice. He was digging too deep. He would find the secrets.
He couldn't stop asking me the question, why?
Oh, God.
Couldn't take it anymore.
Tiny humans.
Oh, boy.
E.T.'s...
We would never leave them on another planet, I swear. Unlike E.T.'s parents.
True. But it's time to escape.
Yep. I mean, this is the scene, right? Like, this is...
This is the one I think most kids are fond of.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, because you got
cool.
Your whole gang's in on it. Your one brother who's, like, months away from getting his driver license steals the trunk. You got fun stunts for the dudes that are stuck in the tube.
Yep. And the music for this was, like, some of the most memorable music from the E.T. movie.
I listened to the E.T. soundtrack. This track is 15 minutes long.
It is, and this track was written before the scene was shot. Well, not fully. This part of the scene was shot, but Spielberg loved the music for this part so much, he reworked the scene to fit in with this music. Music is, of course, famously done by John Williams, who had worked with Spielberg on many other projects and then continued to work with him. And it's one of the most recognized soundtracks of any movie ever.
It makes me think of, I recently learned that in the Book of Boba Fett, his hand coming out of the sand, that entire opening scene is paced to the speech the guy gives in Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
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 I like when that stuff works out.
I do too. But yeah, the music for this is some of the most, like, replayed, memorable music. This scene specifically is, like, the big, like, moment and soundtrack of it. And the fact that the scenes work so specifically with the music, I think also adds to the memorability of it. Because the music's so memorable, like, a lot of people replay it. It gets played a lot in, like, high schools and colleges and bands and stuff. It gets played a lot on just, like, repeat. It shows up on best top 10s. Like, it's so memorable that, like, having it match these very memorable visuals too just kind of, like, builds on itself.
It's like in Baby Driver.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. But also it's a fun scene as a kid because, like, you're like, oh, the cops are everywhere. They're coming to get us. And also, on the other side, these cops are a little bit overzealous to be ready to have their guns and hit children with their cars.
And this is why in the new one, the guns are replaced with walkie-talkies.
No,
I like the guns, though.
I do, too. Give it the danger.
But also, it just feels like... Okay, so this movie is clearly very much a time capsule of the 80s, right? Like, we've shown off so much of 80s fashion and games and life as a kid in the 80s. And cops in the 80s had guns.
Yeah.
And, like, it was part of media. It was stuff that you grew up with. It was on TV. Not having guns on the cops is just weird. And I understand why he did it. I understand why he chose to, like, change it to walkie-talkies. It does make it more palatable to a modern parent audience, right? Mm-hmm. But I disagree with it. I think the guns are required to finish the story.
No, exactly. It shows that it's kind of like a real imminent danger. Also, imagine being these cops and these kids just ramp over you and take off into the sky.
360 no scope.
Yeah. Also, I have a question about this flying scene too.
I can try.
Why are they pedaling in the sky?
Because it looks cool, Miko.
No, it doesn't.
It looks cool.
It looks stupid. What are they pedaling against?
Nothing.
Exactly.
It's flying.
That's why you coast.
No, he's flying. It doesn't have to make sense. No position of human flying in media makes sense. Superman's flying position makes no goddamn sense. The only reason it is that way is because green screen.
Wrong. Aladdin riding the magic carpet. His position makes sense.
Does it?
Yeah, you're going to sit on it or surf on it. He does both.
But it's a carpet. What part of it's holding him up?
The magic.
How much of the carpet is magic? Is it solid? Is the whole thing solid? Or would it be like a rug being held up by the corners and you sink down like a marble?
True. It's the Force.
Peter Pan flying also makes no sense. Why are we T-posing in the sky? Is it more
because
aerodynamic?
It's the cool pose. It's like the superhero landing.
Pedaling through the sky is the cool
No, it
pose.
doesn't. It does not look cool at all. It's just stupid.
It's the most memorable scene of this whole damn movie.
I know, but it makes no sense.
It doesn't. No, none of it makes sense.
The most memorable scene for me is still E.T. dying. Or being found with the raccoon.
He has a giant naked gerbil in the front seat of his bicycle, and he's pedaling through the sky at night. None of it makes sense.
True. But E.T.'s family is here. It's a kind farewell.
Yeah, it's a polite farewell.
So this is the part where I thought it was weird, but it makes a little bit more sense with E.T. as a symbolic pet.
Yes.
Where the older brother just kind of, like, pets E.T.
Yes.
It's just like...
Pet.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's a chance to say goodbye to all of those figures, right? We get a pet-esque goodbye. But we also get a chance to be, like, releasing someone you love back to a new family. Which for the kid, and like we said, like, logically speaking, the dad's probably ditched mom for a 20-year-old in Mexico.
Yeah.
But from a kid's perspective, he's getting to send someone off to a new family that he saw as, like, something of a figure in his life. He's getting to say goodbye to a pet-like figure in his life, and to someone who saved his life Jesus-esque style.
Yeah, the plants revived again.
Yeah.
I mean... Still their powers. I'm just saying.
And if you believe in the sequel of Spielberg and his magical Universal ride, the ride picks up, like, while you're still on the bike, and, like, you go off to E.T.'s planet to, like, say goodbye. And so, like, it's an even longer goodbye and, like, an appreciation of your work on helping to save E.T. So, like, it's all, like, one continuous thing, and the part of the reason I think Spielberg agreed so heartily to, like, claim this as the sequel, because honestly it does nothing for the story. You're literally just there to say, like, hello and goodbye to E.T.'s, like, planet and friends and family, is because it's another level of being able to, like, have a happy goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It is...
It's stupid, don't get me wrong.
No.
The ride's dumb, but it's cute.
Yeah, I mean, Elliot and E.T. are still mentally linked, and it takes him forever to get up the runway, which... True. A cool door, though. I do appreciate the door.
It is, I mean, it's a good spaceship design in general.
Yeah, solid enough CGI with the flying off, but I don't get the rainbow. It's nighttime.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
There's a lot of shit that doesn't make sense in this movie.
You don't technically need it to be daytime for a rainbow. It's just very difficult to have nighttime rainbow.
I don't know.
Because you just need light happening through water droplet. And if ET is light, and there's enough water droplets in the air...
The only time I've seen, like, a moon rainbow is, like, some Final Fantasy bullshit.
Look, I don't know if moon rainbows are real or not, but I am going to Google it here in a minute. We're going to find out if moon rainbows are real.
Fine.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. It's E.T. I don't have a vendetta for these movies. I just start asking stupid questions. And they go nowhere. It's like Inception trying to figure this shit out.
Yes.
There's answers. There are answers. They're just not there.
Yeah, and this is kind of where I think a lot of your questions, because a lot of your questions honestly revolve around E.T. and his workings.
Yeah.
And that's fair. But, like, most, I think, because of how much this movie covers, because even though we kind of went through it pretty broadly, this movie does cover a lot of emotions that are a little bit more nuanced. They use music a lot to help portray that. There's a lot of very minute facial expressions to really get across the points. So, like, we really don't have time to be delving into the anatomy of E.T. in any great depth, especially for a children's movie, which is where I think all of the extra stuff that was supposed to happen with E.T. could have helped explain it. Unfortunately, a lot of the extra stuff with E.T. that was story-based either didn't work out or got nixed. And then the rest of the E.T. stuff, the stuff that you all probably remember, was little tiny things. Little things that he got put in because he was so popular when the movie hit.
Yeah, like a video game that, although technically it didn't crash the video game market.
It did not. It is not the reason. It didn't help. But it did not help.
No. But, I mean, I get it. E.T. was a successful movie. I mean,
it was terribly successful.
It made $350 million in the first year.
It was up for nominations the year it came out immediately.
E.T. was runner-up for Man of the Year for some reason.
It won a Golden Globe for Best Picture. Like, it's among some of the top rates of Best Movie of all time by several different organizations. Like, it is an impactful movie. Like, this movie was very good. It was very critically well received. It made money right off the books. And E.T., while ugly, visually stand out enough to be in other things like commercials, in paintings, in TV show appearances, and one single holiday special.
What?
E.T. has a holiday special. I couldn't get my hands on it.
I'll do some digging.
But that's technically the only other true media of him, because, like you said, the video game was kind of supposed to be like the continuation of E.T.
No, but
they rushed the video game so fast that it didn't have a chance to actually.
The video game is not the continuation.
I know it didn't end up being it. It was meant to, and they went, no, what if we just replayed the movie in the game, and it was bad.
Yeah, I own the game.
I
played it.
I know you do, but like the concept of the game versus what they produced in those 5 short weeks were 2 different things.
Yeah.
One of them should stay buried under that dirt.
You got a gold mine out there if you find them.
Yeah, true.
The many pennies you can have.
True. But regardless, E.T.'s influence in how children specifically approach alien movies changed right after this came out. The thought process that aliens all had to be horror-based changed into something more fun and lighthearted, which carried throughout the 80s.
Yeah, and like, again, it's a fine film. I mean, it's well written, and I mean, honestly, the kids aren't too annoying.
No.
But I do have questions. Here, I have some thoughts.
Okay.
Is E.T. just a cute kids movie, or is it part of the secret elite's agenda to indoctrinate kids and accept the aliens are among us from a younger age? It's a legitimate question.
I think it is it is just slightly more than a cute kids movie. And the reason I say that is because it is a movie that was so well written that it created a time capsule for people's youth. It wrote siblings in it and family dynamics in a way that a lot of audiences really resonated with. It time capsuled real life of growing up in the 80s with D&D being part of your life, having an older brother who smokes, having an annoying younger sister, having those toys, having that wallpaper, having that couch. Like, the detail in the backgrounds and the settings of this movie and how everyone is written so well and acted so well is really a testament of, like, it was so well received and people could remember it, and when they went back to rewatch it, it didn't disappoint them.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't know. My issue with these types of movies is I don't have the nostalgia.
That's fair.
And I know I piss off people with my thoughts on these movies already. So
this one, I think, hits a nostalgia button for specifically people who grew up in the 80s in a way that, like, not a lot of other movies could, because they were not as well written and well acted as this one. The children acting in this one is hands down impressive. These kids did a phenomenal job, and a lot of people specifically think Spielberg is the reason they were able to do so well. He had worked with children before on Close Encounters and had such great success there, and a lot of people said that he works really well with children. Everyone who's ever worked with him, even as a kid, has had a lot of praise on how well he's done and how well he's connected with the kids. And so having children actors and a well-written story in this kind of, like, encapsulating time period, and also remember that, like, there wasn't a ton of other media to bond with your friends over. You were kind of stuck with whatever, you know, the movie was of the summer.
Yeah, because I'm trying to remember. I don't think home video was there, but it wasn't as massive as it would become later in the 80s.
Exactly. And so, like, having something that you could go see with your friends, and then this movie was re-released twice afterwards, which meant you hit the nostalgia button twice on it. Once it came out on home video, it did phenomenally well.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't take it long to hit, like, those great numbers in home media either. It was on VHS tip very shortly after it was released, and a lot of people bought it. And it's not like nowadays where, like, we have this, like, influx of VHS and movies and things to stream and, like, different platforms to even look for media. You're kind of stuck with whatever your Best Buy had.
Yeah.
So, like, having something that was this well done, that was aimed at you and your, like, fellow children in your your fellow youths, if you will. Like, I see why this hits a soft spot in people's hearts. It doesn't hit a soft spot in my heart. I don't rewatch E.T. I don't have a soft spot for him. I don't think he's cute. But I get it. I get why this is, like, a lot of people's comfort movie.
I can too. I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm looking at this movie from someone who's really only seen it as an adult.
Sure. And also, you didn't grow up in the 80s. And your sibling dynamic was not the same. You grew up in a very different setting.
No, I know. It's just, I can see where it would be something that hits that nostalgia button, which, I mean, granted, that's Pokemon for me.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think a lot of people our age, it's Pokemon.
Yeah.
But, like, I think you're a great example of where E.T. is going, because E.T. is still considered one of the greatest movies ever created. Granted, a lot of that has to do with, like, how much money it made versus how much product it made. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into, quote-unquote, the greatest movies. Also, you know, the director, the actors, all incredibly well-known and famous and successful in their own rights. So, like, that adds on to, like, quote-unquote, greatest movies. But this is a movie that, like, our generation is probably the last one where some of our generation are going to be attached to E.T. Yeah. But not most of us.
Well, we watched it because one of the lads, he wanted his kid to see it.
Yeah. And granted, like, I don't think that's wrong. It's good to have, like, hand down these certain things, because some of these will stick with some kids. I'm a good example of that. I'm into Westerns because my grandpa was into Westerns.
I'm into shitty horror films because that's what my dad and I watched.
Yes. So, like, that, like, it's not necessarily wrong to show your kid E.T. because you want them to experience it, but I think you are a good example of, like, E.T. is still going to be a well-loved movie, but it's not going to be something that, like, is going to ever be reproduced.
It's like the Jurassic Park for me, because I watched the original way too young.
Yes, yeah. But unlike Jurassic Park, where we can reinvent Jurassic Park to fit a newer audience who can then love Jurassic Park in a new way, there's not really a way to do that with E.T., because it's a movie about kids in the 80s. And you can't really do the same thing that you can now with this theme, with these characters, without feeling poor.
Make it a horror film.
Yeah, but also, like...
We've had plenty
that.
of those, yeah.
So, like, it's one of those things where, like, the idea of family movies has to change because families have changed.
True.
So, E.T. still a great movie, it's just not going to hit the same.
Yeah. So, on the good, bad, weird scale, Chris, what do you give this movie?
I give this just a good. I get close with the weird because I don't like E.T.'s design, but I think that's mostly a personal thing.
Yeah.
After especially researching and looking into what, like, background pieces they used for him and seeing how they actually made him, looking at the behind-the-scenes footage of that, it is really cool. I just don't like his design. I know plenty of people who do. I know people who have, like, plushies of him. I think they're gross, but they like him. So yeah. I think I'm the odd one out here.
Yeah, here's the thing. I do have to agree. It is a good movie. Yeah. I can't give it the fully weird. The weird is just my dumb interpretation / conspiracy theory, whether he's a Sith necromancer or not.
Sure. No, yeah. I understand.
Yeah, I gotta give it a good rating. I mean, that, like you said, it's a classic. I understand why it's a classic. I understand how it changed aliens in movies, because before you had, like, War of the Worlds or Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where it was still kind of really spooky.
Yeah, it's spooky.
But it was good in the end. And
yeah.
You got Fire in the Sky, which...
There are a lot of fear-based ones as opposed to just more open dynamics, I guess.
Yeah, like Arrival.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Arrival's a great one.
Yeah, so... Chris, would you recommend watching E.T., though? Or recommend E.T. to someone?
Yes, but not as hard as I think my parents probably do. I don't have the nostalgia bubble to, like, push for someone to watch E.T., but if someone's like, hey, I haven't seen E.T., or I don't know if my kids should see E.T., I would say, yeah, it's a great movie. It's a good family movie to sit and enjoy, and if you haven't watched it in a while, it's still good. It doesn't disappoint, but I don't think it's, like, on your top 10 must-sees, and if you're a movie person, it's not on the top 10 greatest anythings for, like, technical reasons. So, like, it's a good watch. I do recommend it, but I'm not going to force anyone to sit and watch this.
No, and I'm in the same boat. I would recommend E.T. from a film history standpoint, / if you're trying to, well, do I pull the Spielberg and indoctrinate a child into extraterrestrials live among us and they're good?
Sure, and like we said earlier, like, there's gonna be kids who, like, E.T.'s their shit. They're gonna love E.T. It's just not gonna be the mass wave of children that it was in the 80s.
No, not at all. And I mean, I get it. It is a product of its time, and I did see a couple snippets of the remastering, and...
It's not a bad remastering.
No, that's the thing, too, is when Spielberg said he tried to be tasteful with it,
I agree.
I completely see what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And it was fitting. Unlike Return of the Jedi with the whole singing bit.
Yeah, it's a little less pandery than some of that was.
Yeah, I don't know. It sits at an odd place for me. I enjoy it enough, but I'm not going to go out and tell people to watch it 100%. So
I totally understand.
Now it's time for that part of the show. Season 6 Bingo. New season and a new game. Chris and I are playing Bingo, and you can too. You can too.
You can too.
Rules for players are simple. 1 stamp per card per episode. Cards can be found on our socials at TGTBTW_podcast on Instagram and Threads, and TGTBTW podcast on Twitter. Or you can email us or request the cards too at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. You can use any of the 3 bingo card variations, but each stamp must be associated with a season 6 episode. First place gets to pick a movie that they would like us to do a deep dive on, and 2 micro reviews for season 7. Second place gets to choose a deep dive and 1 micro review. Third place gets to choose 2 micro reviews. Fourth and fifth place get to choose a micro review. So feel free to share at us on social media or email us for participation. Rules are different for Chris and myself. We only get a total of 2 stamps per dive. First one to get a bingo in either of the categories, good, bad, or weird cards, get to choose a movie that they feel fits that category for season 7. Chris, what are you choosing today?
Today, I'm going to start with my weird card, where I have one where Nicho comes up with an absurd theory for something that doesn't matter, specifically about E.T.'s pooping.
And not the Sith?
Yeah, that too. you hit several today.
Hey,
you had many a good theory. They just didn't do anything.
No, there's no answer. It's like fucking Inception again. There's questions that need to be answered for this bullshit. They don't, though.
Okay, well, too bad. And then I am going to go on my good card and go with just a good vibes movie, as I think that's mostly what this is.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with my bad card.
Okay.
Talking animals for no reason.
Okay. I will let it slide, because we did talk about this.
In the viewpoint that E.T. is a pet. For in that viewing of the movie, he is a talking animal for no reason.
I will give it to you because we explained this so extensively.
Yes. And then I'm going to go with just a good vibes movie for my good card.
Totally understand.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's a chill movie. It's not my favorite good vibes movie, but it's more good vibes than my usual good vibe movies. So.
Understand.
But anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.